Hey everybody, it's PJ from Wisconsin Air Gunners, and we're back for my third installment in this series about the AirVenturi Comp10 and let's call it maybe my quest to become a better shooter by shooting Olympic style pistol in my garage. And today is the day. I've been doing this for a couple of months now pretty regularly. Today is the day where I'm going to kind of wrap things up and talk about the stuff specifically that I've learned. So let's get right to it. So the first thing is I am not going to become an Olympic caliber shooter in my garage. It's not going to happen. I know our hero from Turkey makes it look like he pulled up at the range one day in a minivan after dropping the kids off at soccer practice and decided he was going to be an Olympic shooter. The casual way that he approaches his craft, well, I think it's one of the great things out of the last Olympics. But it's a look, and it works for him. But trust me when I say years and years and years and years of practice go into the craft of 10-meter Olympic shooting. There's just no doubt about that. And without years of practice, really good coaching, there's just no way that this is really going to happen. And probably no one is happier about that than my wife, because she did at least ask once, hey, so are you actually seriously thinking or trying to be an Olympic shooter? I was like, no, honey, that's not a real, like, you can't just do that in your garage. But that doesn't mean that using a tool like this doesn't have significant benefits to other types of shooting that you might do. And this video is to kind of bring that around and talk about the things that I've learned over the last couple of months using this as a training tool. So let's get to the list. So the next thing I want to talk about is pellet selection. And I want to tell you that pellet selection matters. And what you're seeing off to the side is a round of pellet testing that I did with the Comp10. And let's just get this out of the way first. The groups you're seeing are rested groups. So this was not me shooting at 10 meters freehand. These were rested groups just to see if some pellets work better in this particular air gun than others. It is not necessarily an endorsement of or an indictment of any particular pellet. I called my friends at Predator Pellets, and they were kind enough to send out a selection of some of the things they had in the warehouse so that I could try a whole bunch of stuff, because I don't have a ton of lightweight 177 caliber. And the key here is flat wadcutter pellets. I got a lot of dome stuff in the 8 grain range, but not a lot of wadcutters. And if you want crisp holes punched in the target, the wadcutters are the way to go. So what you're seeing now as I'm talking is this kind of roundup of pellet testing that I did. And again, I want to be clear, these were rested shots. As I've said, you're going to get to see all these groups, but I do want to just talk about a few things. As far as the Olympia pellets go, the lightest ones, the match light pellets, were the best of that brand. This is what that target looked like, which I thought was pretty good. I was happy with that. The JSB, they call them the Shack pellets, which is kind of a less sorted but more budget-friendly option. These were a .450 head size, and they did really good. I mean, a really tight group with just that one flyer that kind of dropped out, and you know, you'll see that. I also had really good luck with the good pellets, if you will. These guys come in a plastic case. They've got little foam. Oh, I'm dropping pellets. little foam inserts with each pellet individually popped into a little spot, very nicely presented, and they shot very well. Ignore this hole for a minute. I don't know what happened on this shot. They were all drilling right there. Very tight grouping. And then this one just came out of nowhere. I had no idea. Could have been a flyer, could have been a mosquito in the garage, landed in my nose. I could have waited too long to break. My eyes might have got fuzzy. I don't know. I was so convinced that it had to be something that I took another shot, and that one actually also went a little bit low. So very, very promising, and maybe, you know, before switching, cleaning the barrel would help that. But I was very impressed with those, and the weight on those, just for reference, is 8.2 grains. So the Comp10 seems to like lighter pellets. Now, for people who are doing competitive shooting, it is absolutely critical that you take the time to carefully select your ammunition that best fits the air gun and the barrel you're shooting. And true Olympic shooters put a lot of resources into selecting the pellets that are the best for their gun. And that's a huge part of the precision that they're able to, I don't know, display for us as sports fans. So if I were taking the test results seriously, and what am I going to shoot in this pistol, actually at my level of shooting, these guys are just fine. And I would have no problems shooting these guys, because at this point, I can't shoot this good. So this gives me everything I need at, you know, a more affordable price point. The next thing that I'm taking away from this, you know, again, several months of work, is that the comfort of the gun in your hand significantly matters. This grip is a little bit too small for me, but this style of grip is made out of soft wood so that you can do some customizing to it. So in order to make this more comfortable for me, I have taken a sander and removed some material there. I've removed some material up here. And I've also removed some material here where I was getting a little hot spot with my pinky. And in doing that, have made the pistol much more comfortable for me, not for anybody else, but for me. And that made a huge difference in my ability to shoot accurately. Next thing I want to talk about is when you watch world champion or Olympic caliber shooters in this sport, you watch them on the range, you see them in competition, many of them have very elaborate eyewear. And a lot of people ask, why, or what is that? Why do they need it? I don't own that. I've used some shades in the past, and I get the basics, but this exercise almost pushed me to make a purchase. That's the bottom line. When you go to the range, so you take your 9mm pistol out there and you're gonna go to the range, you're paying for range time, you're paying for ammo, how many shots are you really taking? And with that kind of shooting, in a lot of cases, if you have a coach or an instructor working with you, they may tell you, or you may have seen a video online, or they may, you know, whatever, you may be trying to keep both eyes open as you shoot. When you're doing this kind of precise work where you're not combat shooting and you're not worried about threats or anything like that, you can bet that for me to see the sights in the way I want to see them and then align them with the target downrange, I'm closing my non-dominant eye. I'm closing my left eye. And it turns out that shooting for a long time like this, the muscles in your face actually fatigue. And that fatigue changes your stance. It changes how you approach the gun. It actually detracts from your ability to be precise and accurate. When you look at the type of shooting that these folks are doing, not just in practice, but in competition, where it's a long day of shooting, having a patch over here, aside from making you look maybe like a pirate, steampunk pirate maybe, it actually helps you relax and stay neutral in those muscles. On the shooting eye side, some people use an iris, which basically blocks out a bunch of light, and it changes what, like in a camera world, would be the focal array of the lenses that you're shooting, and actually helps you zero in on things. Kind of like using a peep sight, basically, but instead of attached to the gun, it's attached to your face. And when it's allowed in competition, I totally get why people use those things. Now, I don't have that, but if I continue not down the road of trying to be an Olympic caliber shooter, but using this as a tool, that's something I might play with out into the future. Being consistent when you shoot in any discipline is absolutely crucial. I don't care if we're talking about archery, pistol, rifle. Doing the same thing to address the target every single time will lead you to the best results. And it is really obvious when you aren't on when you're shooting a pistol. You have a very unsupported gun. You are extending it out as far away from your body as you can, and any and every little movement is amplified as you shoot. And if I learned like only one thing in this experiment or this exercise, whatever you want to call it, it is that if I want to be at my best for shooting, I need to create rituals that allow me to be consistent with my shooting. It starts with how you're going to stand when you address the target, where you're going to put the gun when you load it, how you're going to go through the loading, at what point do you air the gun up, how high do you air the gun up, what do you do in order, like I'm going to look at the target, I'm going to get my feet planted, I'm going to have my hands where I want them, I'm going to bring the gun up, do I come high and come down, at what point do I close my non-dominant eye, where is my finger relative to the trigger guard? At what point do I bring it in? When do I start pulling to the break point? And then at what point do I pull the trigger? What am I doing with my breath while all of that's happening? All these things should be exactly the same every single time if you want consistent results. And I don't care what kind of shooting you're doing in the sporting world. Building those kinds of rituals is what it takes to perform at your highest level. And it's something that you can work on every single time you go to the range. It should always be the same method. Now, if you want to tweak something and work that in to test it to see how it does, that's fine, but be intentional about it. That was a huge takeaway from this, and one of the things that I think I will be applying to all of my competition shooting, because I know it's going to make me a better shooter. Another thing I learned during this, and I watched it when I was watching the last Olympics, but it didn't really register to me until I was doing a lot of this kind of shooting, is how intentional the athletes are in finding moments where they can rest. This isn't a super heavy pistol, right? Like many air guns, it's made out of aluminum, so there's a lightness to it. It's its own kind of heaviness, but it's fairly light, right? And you don't think, oh, it gets heavy, except when you're, shooting, and then you're loading, and then you're shooting, and then you're loading. If you watch Olympic shooters, they take their shot, and then they have a place where the gun goes. They're able to relax the muscles that are at work while they're shooting. They load, right? Then they get back in a position, and then they shoot again. That cycle of intensity in taking a shot and then resting and relaxing before it's time to take the next shot is super important. And you need to, in competition, listen to yourself. This is the thing that I saw, and I can remember hearing announcers talk about this while they're focused in, maybe in a finals round, about individual shooters. They'll see somebody, the person will be on target, but they're on target a long time. And then they come back. And you'd hear an announcer say, oh, good choice there. They were on that target too long. There is a point when you're aiming at a target and you are on the target too long. There's a reason a compound bow is made the way it's made, right? So you can hold that draw for as long as possible. But if you've ever shot archery, there's a point where it's like, okay, things are starting to shake now. The muscles, and this is not about being a big bodybuilder or anything. Most of the muscles we're talking about using are smaller stabilizer muscles. They're small. They get tired pretty quick. So taking the opportunity to make sure you're resting as you're practicing and as you're competing, and if you're on target in competition and you feel yourself getting to that point, this is what happens in my head. I don't know what happens in your head. My brain starts saying, you better take this shot soon because I'm getting tired. Like, we can't hold this forever. The wind might be changing. Maybe you should go now. Like, there's this insistence built into my brain that says, we got to do this now. It's important. We got to get it done. Hunting, whatever. Like, we're not going to eat if you don't kill that thing. Like, whatever's going on in there, it's a powerful force. And sometimes you have to say, nah, shut up. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to move my shoulders. I'm going to twitch my fingers a little bit. Okay, now I'm ready to address. I think about past competitions I've been in, how often I've been, at that edge and felt and sometimes rushed a shot. And later I'm like, oh, God, I wish I had that back. Why did I take that shot at that moment? Maybe it's that internal voice that you need to listen to. And instead of rushing, saying, no, we're going to take it back off. We're going to reset, refocus. And now we're going to start from scratch and take the shot and do it right. So something to think about there. So the last thing that I'm feeling like I can really take away from this experience is that the practice that I did over, I live in Florida, so just take winter with a grain of salt. But the practice I did over winter has made me a better shooter overall. All of the things that I practice on a regular basis and then really thought about how they would feed into other types of shooting I do have made me better. I feel like my trigger control is better. I feel like my concentration is better. My understanding of some of the essential things going into this year's shooting season or competition season, I feel like I'm better prepared, even though I wasn't shooting my 30 cal at 100 yards. I wasn't shooting my speed gun. These, for me, are skills that are transferable into the wider range of shooting that I do, which is kind of why I set out to do this in the first place. How important is it to get practice in one area that's going to benefit you in another area of your, call it sporting career or just recreation, whatever? I actually feel really good about all of these things that I've really learned about myself as a shooter in this time. So this is my list of things that moving forward, I'm really taking away from this. And it starts with making sure that when I'm on the competition bench and before that the practice bench, I am using what I would consider like the power of ritual, what my buddy Chris Turek calls a champion's list. Decide ahead of time how you're going to do things. Practice doing it that way, and then carry that through when it's time for competition. I really feel like that is super important, and I think if you talk to people who are shooting at very high levels of sport, whatever that sport is, archery, trap shooting, pistol shooting, rifle shooting, like they're all, you see it in their performance. They're doing things in a specific order. And creating those rituals is certainly part of what I need to do for myself. The next thing relates to the work I did to make this pistol comfortable for me in my hand. We set up our stuff at our home range based on what we have there. And then we go somewhere else to a range where maybe the benches are at a little different height, or the sun angles in differently, or the elevation is different. There's a list of things about how you practice and how you go about competition that are things that you control. Some of those things are outside of your control. But if you don't know about those differences ahead of time, how are you going to prepare to handle that? Do you know what height the stool is going to be relative to the bench at that next place you're competing? Can you find that information out? You can't control the height of the bench, but could you bring your own stool that's adjustable so that you get to sit in the position that you've been practicing at? Because if you're sitting here in practice, but then suddenly have to sit here in competition, that's going to change the entire geometry of how you're approaching your rifle. And it's going to take you a while to get into that. So finding out some information and planning ahead may make that part of competition that much easier for you. And it comes down to my realization for me of, if you're not comfortable, you're not going to perform at your best. I think it's important to know at what point you're getting fatigued in a match. And I think it's important to make sure you are building into your plan how you're going to mitigate that. So do you take a break after every magazine? Do you know what the rules are about standing up from your bench and stretching? Do you have kind of a clock in your head that says, I've been on this target too long? I've seen guys who are making timers to attach their guns. I mean, they got electronic levels, now they get electronic timers so that they have a visual reference of how many shots should they be taking. These are all things that if you don't plan ahead and then practice ahead, you're not going to be ready to use on game day. So something to think about. With regards to your tool in your discipline, make sure that this is set up within the rules, but the way that it works for you. The fact that I try something, or your buddy tries something, or somebody else online tries something and they say it's the latest and greatest has nothing to do with whether or not that's a tool that works for you. There's a lot of things about modern air guns where they can be customized. New grips, different sighting systems, all of those things. If you're shooting in competitions this summer, we're probably past the time where you should be doing that experimenting, but I'm a big advocate of not changing stuff on game day. Rarely have I seen a last minute change make a really big positive difference for somebody. I know if you're watching this at this point and you got a different story, okay, cool. I'm sure it's that way for you. But my advice is practice ahead of time with the change and then put it into play. But you definitely should be thinking about what is it that I can do with this tool that makes it the most successful it can be for me. Pellet selection matters, all that stuff makes a difference. You got to do that work. So I'm going to throw up here an offhand group, 6-shot group at 6 yards, which is what I found I could shoot. Like, I did enough work that I could always hit the target, the whole target, starting out at 5 yards. I got to where I was mostly in the black at 5. I moved back to 6. Things spread out just a little bit. And then now I'm mostly, when I shoot, I'm mostly in the black at 6 yards. So let me show you a group of me shooting. So this was that group. I ain't winning any gold medals, folks. But compared to where I started, where there might be a couple out here at even closer ranges, I'm pretty happy with the progress I made. I did this without the benefit of any coaching. I've had people contact me and say, hey, I noticed you were doing this. There are some practical limitations to this old man's body. I look at people who are shooting and their elbows extend in what appears to be a different way than mine do. I've got 35 years of law enforcement pistol training, and some of that is contrary to the way I shoot this particular pistol. And so I've had to unlearn some things in order to try and develop a new skill set. But this was with the JSB match pellets, and that's pretty reflective. I mean, it's not like awesome, but pretty reflective of what I'm able to do now. And I will tell you, there wouldn't have been 6 holes in the black when I started this just a couple of months ago. So I've seen actually real progress, and I'm pretty pleased with that. I want to thank the folks at AirVenturi for sending this over for me to do this series. It was nice of them to want to play along, and I do appreciate that. And I just want to end with this. If you want to shoot in competition, there is a local or regional competition out there, and there is absolutely no reason why you can't go and win that event. And if you enjoy doing it, there is no reason why you shouldn't be at a national competition, let's say the Pyramid Air Cup, and I look forward to seeing you there. So until the next video, everybody, shoot safe, shoot straight, and I'll see you around.